Want to see how I plan my rabbitry that makes multiple 4 figures a year? Let's do this. Alright, as a disclaimer, I have an old sleeping dog on the floor and I've chucked a few pins his direction to stop the dreaming and whining. So if you hear him, sorry, we're just gonna keep rolling. Alright, what you need to plan your rabbitry or your farm, no matter what it is you raise, this is all gonna be the same. See? You need a calendar first. Now, you sometimes don't have any control over the animals that you raise and when they go into heat and things like that. That is okay. We will talk about how to work past that afterwards. But I want you to mark through all of the days that you do not want to have litters or babies born. And the reason for this being is that you are going to have a much better vacation. You're going to have a much more relaxing holiday season, birthday, time away, whatever, if you are not thinking about your animals being born back at home. A lot of times it's difficult enough to find someone to watch your animals, let alone deal with babies, right? So if you have any control over it, we want to do that. Some other things that you probably need to consider not having babies around is things like 4th of July, especially if you live out in the country and people explode things. I learned this one the hard way last year. We ended up not having a litter because they were stressed out enough, so yeah, that wasn't fun. So 4th of July is the weekend that I don't want to have litters born for me. So think about those days. Mark all of those off. Then the next thing that you need to do is grab, if you have pedigrees for your animals, do that. If not, then some kind of sticky note with their identifier, whether it's a tag number or an ID number, or hogs have, they're clipped out, notch marks, those kinds of things, and their birthday. So this year I have a couple of does that their birthday this is going to be their first year. And so I always like my rabbits to have their first litter before they're 12 months old. So French Laps are bred around 10 to 12 months. And every time I've gone past that, they have not resulted very well. We're not going to get into why right now, but I always like them to have their first litter before they turn 12 months. So I will take a small sticky note and write the month that they turn 10 months so that I know that they can have their first litter from here until whatever, right? So for example, Ava is a year old in May, so that would mean that she could have her first litter in March, which, here we go, we don't want litters born that cold. However, April is a pretty decent time, so she is going to get first priority in spring litters. So what I will do is I know you can't read that, but their information is in this box here along with their birth date, so then I'll put the month up there. So I put that up there. I also have another one, but her birthday is in August. So she's not going to get in the first round of breedings. So I typically will have 2 to 3 does bred at a time. So if I can foster some out to another doe that seems to be doing well, but the other one may not be, it doesn't always work out that way, but it's an option. It's a good way to add some backup if at all possible. So I take the young ones, mark their dates on them, and then after I've done those 2 things, I will also grab the last, well, for us, or for the spring, it's the last frost date. Yeah. So you want the first and last frost dates so that, especially if you're concerned about cold weather, I don't have my rabbits in a barn. They're in a lean-to style hanging cage, and so litters just don't work out well in the cold in that kind of setup. So I have to get them within, this time frame there for them to work. So those are the 3 key things that you need to do. The first and last frost dates, the birth dates or identifiers and the markers there, and then also the dates and times you do not want to have animals being born. Okay? So then, my favorite, sticky notes. Again, I will take one of them and go take the date and go first round be bred by whatever. So we'll just mark on the sticky note first round. Then I will choose the date that I want them bred by and then count out 12 weeks because that is how long it is plus the gestation period. So about 31 days plus 8 more weeks is how long they will be until they are able to leave. I'll get to why that's important. All right. So here is the last sticky note. I put that there on which would be 12 weeks from the breed time. Here's why. I only have 3 doe and litter cages. On top of that, I only have 3 buffer cages, or the cages that I leave empty all the time for some wiggle room, because sometimes people take longer to come pick up their rabbits. Sometimes life, gets in their way, and I am totally okay, holding on to them longer for that to happen. However, sometimes people get it in their heads that, oh, it's doing the rabbit a favor by leaving it with their mom long enough. Well, that is not the case. They will start to fight. So that is, again, another topic for another time. But we do allow or give myself some space for that, even though I can't separate all of them into their own cage. That leaves me enough of a little bit of a wiggle room to where I can separate them if I have to. But if I, breed another round the last month, or before, and I have like 6 that I need to deal with, that's too much. So I need to be able to plan and space those out. So now that I have when the last litter or the first round is going to be ready to leave, I know that the next group can be bred. Since this first one is going to be ready to leave in June, I could, if I wanted to stretch it, breed the next group back in May, because that would put their new litters, the new round of litters, being born around the same time that the other ones are leaving. However, that is still too close. So I want to leave at least 1 week of wiggle room so that I can start rotating them out of the doe and litter cages. Now, why does all this planning matter all that much? If you're restricted with the amount of caging space that you have, and you still want to produce at the max capacity, you're going to have to be strategic about the times that you do this. So that is key number 1. But then the other one is thinking about the time frames of when people want to buy. So I am at the point that I usually have all of them sold before they're even born, but sometimes there's a few that, they'll just kind of be extra. And so I want to have the most animals ready to go, or being able to at least have a deposit placed on them early in the year, because in the middle of the summer, June, July, and August, people are more focused on vacations, not so much on getting livestock and all of that. So it slows down quite a bit in those times there. So I would rather have more litters in the beginning of the year and less towards the end and towards the fall, in order to make those numbers happen. So how can you predict how much you are probably going to make? Now, I say this to all of my students in the Profitable Backyard Farm membership, as well as in the Profitable Backyard Farm ebook, which are both linked below if you want to learn about them, is that you always need to underestimate. Never bank on the fact of max capacity production, okay? So an example of this is something like, my rabbits can have upwards of 7 to 8. However, the number of that, the most often of that amount surviving is not hardly at all. So if I banked on having, 5 litters with all of them with 8, that's going to put me in the hole as far as how much money I expect to make. But if I estimate around 5 babies per litter, that's going to get me close enough and a good average if there are as few as 3 in a litter, or there's upwards of 7. I hesitate to say 8 just because that's so rare these days. But on that spectrum of it, the 5 is a good middle number. So if I bank on 5 instead of 8 per litter, I might have, let's see, I have 7 does at the moment. So if I did 7 times 5 instead of 7 times 8, that's a decent change number. So always bank on the middle range, never more than you potentially will have. Okay?